Hey, what's up, everyone? So I was about to start a new song, and then I kind of got an idea for a tutorial. I'm pretty much completely winging this tutorial. This is my least thought out tutorial. I just had the idea and everything was already set up, so we're just gonna roll and see what happens. So let's turn this webcam off, and we're starting with blank live session, but we're gonna go to splice. We're gonna start with our snares, so we're just gonna type in snare. Exit hat sound there, snares. And we're just gonna play through a few. Where's like those decap snares, they're sounding really good. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this one, and we'll just play it to see where it is right now. We'll turn on the metronome just so we can see with timing where it's at. Yeah, let's move this one back here. Okay, so now that we got this first snare in the place that we want it, I want the snare to play just on like a regular snare pattern or whatever. We're not going to do anything too fancy yet. So pretty much I need this first snare to go here, here, and here. And the quickest way to do that is you want to learn all these hotkeys I'm about to do. So the first one is Command D. So if you just highlight the clip and hit Command D, it duplicates it with no space in between. It just duplicates it immediately after the original clip. But if you highlight a section and hit Command D, it actually duplicates to that next section of wherever you have highlighted. So if I wanted to get this snare here, I would just have to copy the first 4 counts, and you can copy them over at that. You can also do it with the longer one, so you can just duplicate it once and duplicate it over like that. But now we got our snares where they need to be. So on that second snare, I'm gonna add like a like on that. And here's where the control aspect really comes in, because if I just duplicate this over and then duplicate it, I believe it's right there. Nope, right here. So all those snares are the same exact sound, the same exact velocity, the same exact volume, the same exact length. And with Midi, you can play that at a lower velocity, which is pretty much just lowering the volume. So if you wanted to do that, you just double click in there and lower the volume to whatever you want it to be, and now it's... But you can have a little bit more control over that if you actually just bring it in and make it shorter and fade it out to a really short note. And now you have something like this. And then we can actually... Another method to get this to go here is, instead of duplicating, because if I were to just do this and hit Command D, then this first snare comes in, you can actually just hold Option and drag it over, and then it just duplicates there as well. Like I said, to make this really, really fast, you just want to get all these hotkeys down packed. So as soon as you know the hotkeys, you can start figuring out the fastest way to get to where you want to be. So yeah, it's really, really helpful. But I want this section to go in the second section as well, so I'm actually just going to delete that whole second section, highlight the first section, and duplicate it over. So now we have this. Cool. So those are mostly all the techniques I use. Now we're just going to see how fast we can put a whole beat together using other stuff. So I'm just going to try and find a hat here, and that one sounds decent. We'll just drag it in. So we can actually turn off the metronome just so we can hear what we're doing here. So okay, so one thing I love to do with hats, I do it in so much of my music because it just sounds so cool, is just have it writing on every, I believe there's 16th notes, maybe 8th notes, but pretty much you put them like this, and the second one you just bring the volume down by half. Yep, and that way it's like so, and then we just duplicate these all over into the bar, and then we can just highlight that, duplicate it over. So another thing you could do, another technique is bouncing and kind of rendering. So if you highlight a section, such as all these hi-hats, which are a bunch of different clips, you can hit Command J, and that's going to render it into a single audio clip. And then you can adjust the pitch of this whole entire track rather than the individual thing. So we could just play with the transpose knob here. Cool. So let's get the kick drums in. We're just going to move really fast just so we can get a drum beat out, and that's how I like to work, extremely as fast as possible, so you can start getting ideas out and not really be hindered by other stuff. Also, a lot of people ask me if I start with drums a lot. It's usually 50-50. One interesting thing I really like to do that helps me with the songwriting process is to just make a drum loop, and having a drum loop there, just literally having it there, will give you new ideas when you're actually playing instruments. And then if you make that instrument and you don't like the drums, literally just delete all the drums you did, because it was kind of just for reference, and redo all the drums to like fit your instrument. So there's that too. But let's start going through a few kicks. That's already fire. See? First sample, already fire. So could delete this audio track with nothing on it too. All right, so we're clipping in the master. I'm just gonna bring the volume of everything down a little bit just to make sure we're not clipping. Turn the kick down a little bit. Cool, and you just do the same thing with the drum. Just kind of move it around wherever you want the pattern to be. And then if you want to add a little bit of swing to it, you can actually add swing manually by just zooming in really far and moving it over a box or two. Another thing you can do to add swing, I don't think I'm going to do it on the kicks, I'll show you guys on the hats, but if you click this button down here, it reveals the sample delay of a track. So if you want this hi-hat to not be exactly on the beat and you want it to drag, you could just increase this number. So we're going to play it and increase this, and you'll see what happens. See how far it is off the beat now? So if you want to do that, I like to put it just a little bit, not too much at all, just to kind of give it that separation, because a lot of the issues with a lot of mixes that I hear is transients fighting. So you never want to have too many transients fighting. So this kick has a very large transient and this hat has a very large transient. So if you move the hat, like technically what we're doing when we move this number up is we're just dragging it over a little bit, but now the transients are off. So the big transients of the kick is here, but the big transients of the hat is here. So they're not fighting each other in the mix, which is a really good way to clean up your mix as well. So let's finish this off. Duplicate that over. And just for kicks and giggles, let's add in an open hi-hat. So we'll just type in hat. There's an open hi-hat. Turn that down a little bit. We can close that. So another cool thing you can do with especially open hi-hats, I find that it works really well, is just duplicate this by option dragging it down to a new track, bringing it over, and then on the second open hi-hat, or the first, however you want to do it, just pitching it. We can pitch it down like 5 and just see what that sounds like. Try 3. And then we could duplicate those over the other 4 bars, and then we can actually move the first one a little bit to the left in the stereo field and the second one a little bit to the right in equal distance. So this last one I just want to make really short and just to cut off with the snare really quick. So yep, cool. Cool, and the last thing I want to show you guys, because I just want to do the drum part for now and have that be its own little tutorial, is the 808s. So let's just type in 808 and splice, and we can show a little bit an easier way to do 808s as well. The only downside to doing this technique manually is you don't get pitch bend, because you have to have the 808 in a sampler to get pitch bend in live. But let's just find an 808. So we're going to use this 808, which is currently at C. Now if you notice, this 808 actually has a kick at the beginning of it, like bundled into the 808. That's why you get this like black waveform over here. So there's actually like a little pop there. So I actually don't want that because we already have a kick and I want to control the kick separately. So we're just going to drag it over until it's not there anymore and just make sure to fade in a little bit. Just to have that. So let's unsolo that, turn it down a little bit, and then from here we can just start cutting and pitching this 808 through the audio thing. So bring this down a little bit, so duplicate that over, we'll drag that up an octave. By the way, to do an octave, you just click on the wheel, and if you use up and down arrows, they go down by 1/2 step, and if you hold shift and go down, it goes up and down by an octave. So really quick way to go through pitches. So we're going to save that. I'm just going to duplicate this actually and drag it out. Oops. I don't even know what my hotkey is to do that, so let's put this in right here. So octave up and come right back down. This is the one with the swing, so I just want to make sure it's on the same swing. We'll duplicate this guy back over. We'll bring this up a step and a half, see what that sounds like. Nah, let's do this again. Let's do an octave and another octave really quickly. So gonna do the first octave of C, so C4, and then double click it again and bring that up to another octave, which is 24 steps up. So let's duplicate this whole thing, but change up something about the second half. Like down, down. So duplicate that, go up to 2.5 steps up. Go there. Go down a step. Boom. Just for kicks and giggles, to end off the tutorial, I'm just going to do some very rough mixing. To record these tutorials, I have to wear Beats headphones and I can't use my monitors to mix, so spare me. But first off, I just like to make sure my drums aren't clipping, just in the master track here, so you shouldn't see any red the whole way through the beat. And then I'm just going to go through, add some saturation to a few things. And yeah, another thing you can do is that render trick. So if you want to turn all these into clips like the hi-hat, you can actually just highlight all of them and hit Command J, and that'll render all of them at once. So now you got all these little clips that you can conveniently duplicate out. So let's do some of this beats writing. Very first thing is compressor on the 808s, and we are going to rename our kick just to make sure we know what it is, kick. And we're going to, usually I'll make a whole separate track for the side chain so I have more control over it, but since this is a quick tutorial, we're gonna take the side chain from the kick channel, bring the threshold down a lot, and that way the 808 will duck every time the kick plays. So they're not fighting in the mix. So let's add a saturator to our snare, and we're just going to bring up the drive after turning soft clip on. Give it a little more punch, same with the kick. We're going to add a saturator to it. Just bring up the drive after adding soft clip. All of Decap's drums literally have already so much saturation, so you don't have to do it a ton, but it does help a little bit. Also, if you want this 808 to just have a little bit more distortion, I'm gonna add an EQ to it and a saturator, and we're gonna put the compressor after all that, just so the compressor ducks out after the saturation is done. But turn on soft clip, and if you just bring up this drive, it'll go crazy really quick. Okay, so EQing the 808, pretty much I like to EQ so phones can hear it, and if you want phones to hear it, you want to boost around the 300 hertz area, because that's where phones really start to pick up bass. You can hear things that are just above 100 on a phone, but really they start to pick up around 300, so I always like to boost around 300. I'm actually going to cut some of the sub out of the 808. You would be surprised how much sub you don't need when making 808s. Now I just want to see where the kick is sitting as far as the frequency goes, so I'm just going to put an EQ8 on it. So it's a really subby kick, so you just don't want to boost the kick in the same place that the 808 is. So since I boosted the 808s in the 300 range, maybe like 260, I'm actually going to boost the kick a little lower so it doesn't fight with the 808. I'm actually going to cut a little from where the 808 frequency is sitting. Add a little more click to this too. And just make sure you're not clipping in your master. And for the piece of resistance, just for the tutorial, to do it quick, we're gonna go to the audio effect rack, mixing and mastering, and we're gonna add the Midi analog master to the master channel. And that really kicks everything up. So without this preset, and with. Cool, so that was just a thrown together tutorial on how I do my drums. I hope it doesn't end up being too long because I know I rambled a little bit. But yeah, if you learn all those shortcuts, really laying audio and drums, you can do the whole thing in under like 3 minutes. It makes it really, really, really fast, and you can control everything really quickly. So that's just like how I like to do drums, because you can start making music faster and not really have to worry about playing it around. The one time that I don't think this technique works too well is when you're kind of uninspired. So when I don't have an idea of what kind of song I'll make, that's when I'll start messing around on the keyboard in the Ableton Push, because the Ableton Push especially is really, really great at just getting ideas out and creating ideas and thinking about things in ways you wouldn't have thought of before. But besides that, I really like to move fast, and doing the drums this way is the fastest method I have found. A few of these techniques, I just want to shout out Mr. Bill. I'll link his YouTube in the description, but he's also a person that likes to work very fast. He used to be a gamer, and now he makes music, and he's all about knowing all the shortcuts, and I got a lot of these shortcuts from him. I hope this stuff helped you. If you enjoyed this video, just drop me a subscribe, but also let me know in the comments whether you guys like the more produced tutorials that are more in depth versus this one, which is just kind of thrown together. Because if the thrown together tutorials are okay, I can actually put like way more out. So you'll get more like tips and tricks and techniques that way, but they won't be as good. So just let me know what you guys think. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.